What is your thoughts on, you mentioned, there's one thing that I've been thinking about for a long time. I don't know if it sort of ties with the mental model, but it's all about sort of energy and entropy. And it can be kind of, you know, interesting because obviously it's a physics scientific concept, but it does apply to, the way we live our lives. Do you want to just give a quick or one, overview of your thoughts around sort of moving from low entropy to high entropy and sort of what entropy is, because I think, and then how does that tie in with everything? Because I think there's a lot of interesting people who would love to learn about this. It's an interesting philosophical concept, but maybe we can just talk about it for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm always looking for ways to intermix interdisciplinary concepts and find connection. So like that's really what a mental model is, right? At the end of the day, we say like, oh, this concept is first principle, which is true in chemistry. How can we apply it to what we're doing over here in storytelling? And there's a lot of interconnection, but also I encourage people to not get too lost into the specifics, because a lot of times like people will be like, well, that formula doesn't quite exactly work out. It's like, no, it's not about being perfectly right. It's about moving in the direction of right? So like, that's really what a framework is not trying to say like, here's a specific thing. So within entropy, the way I think about this is that it's known that the universe, if left to its own devices, is in a state of constant decay towards entropy, right? Like ever increasing amounts of chaos. And so if we leave a system, you as an individual being, say, the system, and your life being the universe or whatever, if you're not injecting energy into that system, if you're not injecting order and stability, then you're going to keep sliding backwards. And this is where like that idea, like there's only two directions in life for a human. There's either forward or there's backwards. You're either making progress or you're declining into entropy. And when you start to think about it that way, then every activity that you do can really be looked through the lens of like, okay, is this moving me toward me in my state towards a place of order and stability or greatness, as we talk about, or is it moving me towards a place of chaos and like entropy? And for me, a lot of my life, because I didn't have systems and I didn't have a way of injecting energy correctly into the system, I was just sliding backwards all the time. And I would notice it in my health. I noticed it in my relationships. I noticed it in my work. And so just recognizing that you can't stay static. Like nature abhors a vacuum. So like this idea of like, oh, I'm just going to tread water and stay put. No, you're just running out of energy. Treading water is just a way of running out of energy, and eventually you're going to drown, right? So you're either swimming towards shore, maybe you're trying to tread water to recover for a bit so you can keep going forward. But at the end of the day, like there are only two directions. And within that, then I find that there's an interesting correlation between injecting energy into the system and the speed in which we inject energy into the system. And it's really fascinating that the people that I know in my life who are the most successful, it's not always that they're doing infinitely more, like they're injecting more energy into the system. A lot of times they're injecting the same amount of energy as I am. They're just doing it faster. And that has so many more profound effects, whether that's like, when I started writing 3,000 words a day, which is a ton of words. The reason for that was because when you look and you hear like Malcolm Gladwell says it takes 10,000 hours to reach mastery in an activity, which true or not is a helpful framework. Again, it's in the trajectory of truth. Well, in writing, that's not a good corollary, because if I spend 10,000 hours, but I only write 10 words, I probably didn't get any better, right? So in writing terms, what people talk about is that you need to get at least 1 million words out of you before you start getting to those good words. So you got 1 million crap words you got to write through. And I was like, okay, well, if it's going to take me 1 million words to start writing good, then I should just start writing a ton, which was 3,000 words a day for a year. That is about 1 million words. And I figured at the end of this year, I'll have gotten all my crappy words out, and then I'll be ready to start writing good words. And it could have been the same amount of energy, right? I could have written 1,000 words and it would take me 3 years, but the results, because we injected it into the system so much quicker, was so much more drastic. So by the 3-year mark, I had already written 3 million words rather than just 1 million. And then we had published 10 novels, right? And so the speed at which you do things often matters more than just the total amount of energy you're trying to input into the system.
So I guess the takeaway here is that all systems are tending towards chaos. And so because of that, it's up to us to make a decision on whether we want it to leave it to its own devices and then it will sort of decay and collapse. Or if you really care about it and it means a lot to you, then you need to put the energy, put the effort in, put that time, which is a manifestation of energy in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And then trying to figure out, well, why does that matter to you? Because that's why building a company is hard. Building a good relationship is hard because those are ordered systems. And because they're ordered, it requires energy to put into that. I feel like that's sort of the big takeaway. And then tying that back in with the creating part, the priority management, the discipline, is that's energy. All of that, preparing for your day, putting in the effort and time to make sure that you can be the best self that you can be in building whatever you need to build. That is a byproduct of sort of the entropy that we spoke about.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And I think relationships are a really good example where if the relationship isn't everything that you want it to be, then the question you have to ask yourself is what kind of energy are you putting into it? Right. In a lot of cases, it's very clear, you're just not putting very much energy into it. It's very clear and obvious. And that holds true in all aspects of life. And so I think that's just a really easy mental rubric to always ask yourself, how much energy am I putting into this and how quickly am I putting it into it? And sometimes you're putting the right amount of energy. You're just not putting it in a condensed period, a tight enough period of time. And if you just tighten the time in which you do the work, again, you go back to Parkinson's law, the work expands to fill the time allotted to it. If we just allot less time to things, but we try to pack the same amount of impact into it, then the result is it's not linear, it becomes quadratic.